thanks everybody for joining us. We might have some more people come in, I don't know. But thanks for joining us for the artistic perspective. This is a discussion that I'll help facilitate, but is largely between Anita, Jade, Zach, and all of you. So Pam, I know that you had seen the show already today. Janice, have you seen the show yet? That's okay. No worries there.
Before the 16th.
Yeah. My mom's doing the same thing. It's totally cool.
We won't give what helps us to know is that you haven't, so we don't give away all the deep dark secrets in it.
But yeah, I'd love to know, both for Anita and Jade, what are some things that really like excited you about this script? What are things that made you want to dive in with both feet?
Well, if I can just start and say that when I sort of reached out to Jade and said, Jade, I'd love to have you come back and work on a project. And it, our stipulations are it has to be a one-person play, and that's and it should be something that is uplifting as opposed to something that is like completely a downer because of where we are. And so now I'm going to let Jade take over because she looked at a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I did. I looked at a lot of plays, and coming to this one, it felt right. The humanity in it, the humility, the humor. Uh, it just felt like the right time for the message of the play, and just yeah, it felt, and to do it with Annie Hank, who immediately came to mind, was great. But also an opportunity to laugh, and also to be reminded that it's okay to breathe and just be where you are right now. And sometimes that's the best place to be. Felt like a good place also to live as an artist in telling that story. But it was wonderful to be back with an audience in that moment, I think.
Yeah, I would just add that I think what I really enjoy about the script is that we think we know this person. We think we understand who she is and where she's coming from. And so I know I approach her with my own biases in mind about what a person who's a waitress who's been married once in Texas and now has moved to New York, what she's going to want to be and how she's going to present. And what is beautiful about this piece is how unexpected the journey is that she makes, so that it makes you recognize, and you see her seeing in herself that maybe she's not the person she thinks she is either, which is it's just sort of beautiful in this moment too, where I think we're all looking at how, who are we, how do we fit into the world, how are we engaging with everybody else that's here with us.
Mm-hmm.
I think that feeling of like, who are you after all this time not being that person for other people, is going to have a lot of resonance with a lot of people. I know that I'm like, do I like those things, or were those just things that I did? Mm-hmm. Are those the things I want to commit my life to? Or like, I don't know, do I do karaoke on Thursdays? Those kind of small things. I don't know.
I have a question
Yeah.
for Jade, and that's that this is really, it's a period piece. It's clearly not set right now, and yet it's also it's close enough that a lot of what she looks sort of different, and she's got a rotary phone, so hopefully that keys people in, but it still feels very much of the present. And what is it like to work on a period piece that's not Chekhov or Shakespeare or, an August Wilson set in the 30s?
What's interesting is we kind of decided to go backwards. Often with the classics that are written, 100 years ago, you bring them closer to you when you set them. When this play came out in 2003, but I wanted to, which is kind of still close enough in our collective memory that it's a little muddy in specificity. So I decided we decided to put it, well, eventually in the 90s, which felt more like a period piece. Like you could um, more immediately put it somewhere else. So and when you can put something somewhere else, I find sometimes it's easier to relate to when it's not right in the the present. And 2003 is, it's the 90s was also really fun to play with because so much of the play is about perception and the masks we put on and what we see in the magazine, kind of buying the the commercial. That's the life I want. And just looking at the 80s and 90s and when that kind of fame became so celebrated, that kind of excess and the shoes and the glitter and everything is gonna fix it and make my life. I'm gonna buy this magazine and my life's gonna look like page 38 and I'll feel great. So setting it where that was such a present part of our culture, I thought was exciting.
I had that same question about the time period because I was sort of getting confused, not being a shoe person. My favorite shoes are my sneakers. And frankly, Jade, you look pretty comfortable in your sneakers.
Yes.
Maybe a little more so than those 20-inch things that you tried to tightrope walk on. But anyway, so I'm not, I just, a time frame for me with shoes is, there's no time frame. I mean, I know that they're tall, high stilettos and all that kind of stuff. But so I was sort of confused by that, except for the rotary phone. And I think there was one other thing, which I can't remember now, that was more than current.
Well, the phone book was a big
Oh, the phone book. Absolutely. Yeah. I was thinking that person shouldn't even know what a phone book is.
Yeah. So there was the phone book is actually it's a plot point in the script that that she calls him, sorry mom, that she calls him on she doesn't have his house phone, she only has his cell phone. But it's still at a point in history where people had cell phones, but there's still those phone books where you could look up, someone's house number. So that felt, that's essential to it's in the script, but also puts us somewhere that is not right now.
Right. That was the other thing. Right. The other thing that I sort of kept looking at, and I couldn't put it into, except you were sort of a fashionista, was the mannequin model and the pictures that were also dress whatever period of some period, not now, then.
Oh, those Pam, those are more 50s, so it's not of that period. It's almost like, she has this obsession with clothing.
Okay, it's
so
just
perhaps it goes back to a period, and a lot of times, I know certainly my experience in trying to thrift shop things in those eras were that you would find something that was fantastic. But everybody was so much smaller back in the day, so that there was no way it was going to go on your body. And right. So just this penchant to like get things that you would, or, was that the prom dress that she wore because she, that was the in period to emulate in that time period.
Okay. And this kind of fantasy movie life. There's
right,
the Mildred Pierce through line that she keeps coming back to, and this idea of like, knowing the end of the movie, and so that kind of classic ideology of costume, of the dress and shoes, and you know.
Mhm.
And then some of it's a little more practical. We had the two images we had. And so we're trying to reuse things. And it's like they looked like they felt like her room to me. And so I said to, we looked at all the comforters and things and said, is this woman? And who is this person? And does she like florals, or is it bold prints, or is it stripes? What is it? So Jade, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, we came back to the magazine, the idea of like what was in the magazine at the time. So the kind of um, floral bed cover with the pink dust cover and the matching pillows is that Laura Ashley. You would have seen that in like how to decorate your bedroom. Coming back to this idea of not just trusting what you want, but thinking, I'm going to do this the way it's supposed to be done. But also with a little bit of, who Annie's Haley was. But this idea of what was sold kept coming back to me as far as some of the choices, and the movie, the classic movie star with the vanity, and so that's kind of how I was making the choices out of. And Anita, we had to look at stuff in the lobby, and we picked out all of the lampshades, and there was different comforters to pick out, and kind of creating which I love that part of the process, creating the character through all of the choices. So everything from where her necklaces were hanging was part of who this Haley was. What did she get at a flea market for a really good deal that looked like something she saw in a magazine? Those were conversations we had, Annie and I had as well. So.
Well, and Annie and Rodrigo, who's the costume designer, were hugely influential in terms of what that world all ended up looking like, and how it felt. And I think Rodrigo and Annie really, in terms of what does this woman wear to go out, that was huge discussion. And Jade, maybe can you speak a little bit about what it was like to have those conversations about what she should be wearing when?
Yeah, I mean, it stemmed from the character's securities and insecurities, and where she was with dating, and how she wanted to be perceived, what she was, what she's fearful of. She starts out and, she's got that line, I look like a hooker. She's got that tiny little dress on. And then by the end of the scene, she's got, a mid-calf skirt, a jacket, just a shirt buttoned up to here. So, she decides she's not going to take risks. And just kind of the arc of all of the things she's putting on to please somebody that she thinks is going to make something work, to where she finally ends at the end of the play in her slippers, jeans, hair back, and a sweatshirt. I just thought that was a wonderful journey to go on with Rodrigo and Annie as well. And also, what colors does this woman wear? What colors does this evoke? Or yeah, that was Rodrigo's really great. And Rodrigo and Annie had a lot of conversations. I mean, I was involved in all of them, but they had a lot of conversation eventually, but they had a lot of starter conversations without me too.
So, and Zach and Jade, there were tons of costume changes that happen on stage in front of an audience. And because of COVID restrictions too, when Annie goes off stage and then comes back on, it's very limited how anybody can help her backstage. And do one or other or both of you want to speak to sort of what that process was like, trying to figure out?
It was a jigsaw puzzle. Zach, do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, it was definitely a challenge. And Teresa kind of helps us because she gets dressed for the most part on stage. There are only really two quick changes that had to happen. But it was a challenge because nobody could touch her. Nobody could be back there assisting in the costume changes. And so conversations kept happening about, how do we fix the skirt so we can just rip off and then they can put it back together later. and I finally got down to, less than a minute, but it started off a couple minutes long for that first transition to the second scene. But with the repetition and everything, it kind of cut it down some. And to distract from it, we had a great conversation about the lights and the sound and the projections that are on the back wall too, to see how we can gap that time jump from the first scene to the second scene, and how we can help the audience think about that transition and picture what's happening.
Pam, I'm really curious how that felt in the video. I mean, when you're in a theater, you sort of buy, okay, there's somebody and it's a physical person who's having to actually do something here. But on a video, I wonder if it felt like if those little transitions felt like normal, or did it feel like, wait a minute, why are we waiting here?
Well, after the first wait, you knew why you were waiting, because there was, she was on a date and she was coming back, or somehow she needed to change her clothing off stage, even though she was on a date, and why is she? Well, but the thing for me is, and I was watching a laptop, thank goodness, not an iPhone. That would be terrible, because my laptop is, about this big. I don't know, 8 by 10 or whatever they are.
Mhm.
It's not very big. And so I had a hard time seeing what it was that I was looking at. I kept thinking I could see shadows of the room, but then it almost looked like it was lights from the city, like city lights, that were being projected into the room.
Yep.
And so, but I think that, if I had been in the theater, it would have been very evident what I was looking at. The why is, there are often pauses. So I don't think people get stressed out by a gap, especially if you're being entertained and it's not black. So, I thought that was fine. The other thing I kept wondering, though, every time you opened your daughter's door, Vera, I kept,
Yeah.
Vera,
Vera.
yeah. I kept trying to remember, is that music at the same spot? Because every time you open the door, the music automatically goes on. So it's a timed, somehow it's connected to the door. And it was just sort of a funny, how you get obsessed by some weird things. And so I kept wondering, is she listening to the same piece through the whole?
So Jade,
it didn't make any difference. It was just something
No, it was different music each time, but it's that kind of, teenage.
It all sounded the same to me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's kind of a joke in that. It all kind of sounded the same and went nowhere in that kind of 90s teenage. Yeah.
Because it's sort of an interesting thing, because in the theater, typically we have a license that allows us to use work when it's in person, in the moment. We pay for it, and suddenly, now that we're doing this video thing, suddenly it's a different ball game. And so, Jade, can you speak a little bit to the work that you did with his name just went out of my head. Charles, thank you, on that, and how you came up with what should be in there.
Yeah, it was. It's all a different process now, Pam. It's just, this has been I'm so grateful that we got to do this in person, but it was a different way to think, because our pre-show mix would have, I think, made it, if everybody heard the pre-show mix, the fact that we were in the 90s is established before the show.
Mm-hmm.
and then the music that's coming out of Vera's room has a different conversation with the piece, because it's kind of it's commenting on more than one level of just a teenager listening to like loud music, but it's specific to the time, and like, you know, but what Charles and I were able to do with stuff that was in more, I think is a public domain, was find stuff that had those, you know, 90s boy band bridges and little like melodies and stuff that that a lot of people used. So then it was just that familiar, but it was a little further away in our familiarity. But we did, it was like, oh, okay, that's NSYNC. Okay, that's, you could kind of pinpoint the genre. So we did that. We listened to a lot of music, and you can't see it in the video, but one of my favorite, I actually sent it to my best friend, who is also a 90s teenager, is Vera's room. If you're house right, like stage left, you see right in there, and there's Beanie Babies and River Phoenix, and I mean, it's a whole, it's very specific to the, it makes the music even more specific to where we are, I think.
So, and Jade, we had originally sort of said, let's go all the way back to 80s. And then sort of halfway through, it was like, whoa, wait a minute. You want to speak to that a little bit? Or maybe Zach was a part of that too. The two of you can, again.
Yeah, yeah. Zach, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So, well, you originally started with 80s to go more of like disconnecting from us, right? About moving it, going with the idea of moving it back. And then as we kept working through the script, there were little things that were, there's a reference to like Leo DiCaprio, and there's a cell phone, and like these little things kept popping up, and it was like the first 2 days of rehearsal, and it was like, oh gosh, maybe this doesn't work this far back, and so eventually we had to bump it up, and I think we landed about like 95, 97. Is like everything makes sense in this realm of years.
Yeah, it was the cell phone. It was the cell phone for me, because there were other things I was like, well, that's forgivable. And I had even gotten Teresa's blessing. Teresa's the playwright, on setting it in the 80s. I just kind of, I just kind of told her and said, I hope you're okay. She was like, oh, absolutely, that's a great idea. And I was like, oh, but the cell phones. Lewis has to give the number on the cell phone. She can't have his home number. Otherwise, she would know he was married. So, sorry, Mom. So that was really the reason. So then it was like, okay, well, who had cell phones, had car phones? It'd be too big. It's like you have a lot of money to have cell phones. So that was what it was like, okay, it's got to be like after 94. So that was the reasoning. It was problem solving. Problem solving after a choice.
So Anita, you asked me that question about the interludes. Can you describe what I was looking at?
What you were looking at was sort of, it was abstract city lights.
Oh,
So
okay.
It's not meant to be something that you go, oh, it's a photo realism. Let me look at what that world was. But it was meant to evoke what being in a city would feel like when she's out on the date in a slightly more abstract. And it, along with the music, we tried to work it in a way where it was telling its own story within each of those little segues. So you can see where the date starts in a good way, and then you can see where it just sort of falls apart. And and often in the theater, audiences would laugh when that sound cue would happen, where you what's happening. You get it, and it's a story that Jade and Charles told in sound, and then I was able to add an image to it that just helped visually have the whole thing just collapse into a disaster that you then go on to hear all about in the script. So,
I did sort of get it, that it was cityscape, in a dark apartment. Yeah. the reflections of the lights. A long
Right.
time
Well,
since I've been in a city.
Yeah, I was saying earlier to Jade that this is the apartment that or maybe I did this already with all of you, that this is sort of like the apartment that I lived in for a number of years. So it is old home week in a funny way, being and seeing that space. I wish my apartment had been as large as this space is.
Cool. Any more questions for Anita, for Jade, for Zach?
I don't know when did you have a real audience when you filmed it, or was it a put together Portland Stage and Friends?
It was mostly Portland Stage folks who were there, but we found that audiences were really vocal. A lot of times people would, when she would hang up from one of these events, people would cheer. It's people, or she'd say, "Do you like this?" And people would respond yes or no, or I don't know. So from the get-go, she did such a great job of just sort of engaging with the people sitting in the theater and really inviting them into her space and into her story.
Yeah.
Jade, can you talk a little bit about crafting that and how you worked with her on that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think one of the best things for direct address, whether it's Shakespeare or Rebeck, is if the audience is on your side. Like specifically, they're on your side. They get it. So kind of we started with that kind of these people are in your corner. This is somebody who's there just for you, and they get it. We started with that kind of idea, and then she's just not just a great actress, but a great performer in that. So she can live in the moment with an audience and kind of feel that with just the few that I saw. And we talked about where those moments were a little bit, kind of how she was relating to the audience while I was there, because I was able to be there was that 2 shows, Zach?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On an invited dress. And there's part of that is just feeling it out, and part of it is also finding the moments that are really important, where we're kind of planting the seeds that are important to they add up later, but we're not supposed to know they add up, so making those kind of specific to how we underline them or lay them out. I think that was another, we mapped it.
Yeah. Zach, I'm remembering this anecdote that you wrote about the genesis of this play with Teresa Rebeck, and how she was like talking with an actor friend about bad dates that like the two of them had been on or something like that. Is that ringing a bell?
Yeah.
Could you talk about that, or is it not ringing enough of a bell?
No, that's what I remember of it. That there was
Oh.
some conversation happening.
Well,
about
I think
the situation with bad dates.
What I really love about like the tone of the piece is that it feels like you should have a glass of wine and you're like chatting with your friend about like this terrible thing that happened, and so much of it is that very clear direct address. I'm like, you get it, come on, like what was he thinking, what was I thinking, why were we doing this?
You're in my bedroom with you, of course I'm gonna
exactly that I think just really like flows throughout the whole piece and makes it so exciting in a way that like if this had a traditional fourth wall, it would be like such a very different show.
Mm-hmm. Well, you'd almost feel like you were snooping if it had a fourth wall.
Yeah.
I mean, she invites you in. It's a chance to have a conversation with her and share. And there are moments then though where you see her reacting and having things that you probably wouldn't be there at the time that she was having that kind of reaction.
And Teresa does it so well by starting the play with a question to do you like these shoes? I mean, it just sets up the vocabulary immediately. And then you also get the other layer of who she is by the little conversations with Vera and the conversations with her brother.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the voyeuristic level into a bedroom you're already invited into, but then you get to listen into our private conversations as well. So there's layers to it, which I think Rebecca just does well.
Mhm.
There's also, I think, in working with Annie Jade, there's huge numbers of layers for her in terms of I'm now trying to remember which outfit I'm putting on my body and how I'm zipping it up, and I'm saying words at the same time, and what is the thrust of what I'm trying to get across, and how to make that all feel like it's totally natural, like that this is just you in your room doing the stuff you do in your room, but it's actually very highly constructed. Can you speak to creating that vocabulary a little bit?
Oh yeah, lots of conversations, lots of rehearsal, lots of timing of zippers with, around certain lines, and whew, uh but talking about the tentacles of it is like, so it's not just one thing happening. It's like, there's there's one thing. She wants, she wants a good date. She wants like the perfect date. She wants she wants to be loved. She wants to belong and to have someone like her age to connect to. Um, and that's kind of what guides her. And then what she thinks she can do, who she thinks she has to be to make that happen, to get ready for these dates. So all of that is related to where she is with what she's pulling out of the closet. If it's a mini skirt, if it's putting on her t-shirt to, what, I'm just done with the dates. I'm putting on an old t-shirt. I'm putting all the clothes away. I'm closing the door in the closet. Um, if it's my life's at stake, let me just throw on something without thinking about it. But wherever she is, so that's happening, that's got to be happening. She's got to be thinking about that in a way that she's not thinking about it, so she can think about what's at hand, which is, her super objective, or whatever she's like wanting to get to, and then all of the words around that and all of the places that leads her brain to, which are like the tentacles of, my mother and the shoe store that I used to live next to, and Velco, and all of the places where her own mind leads her to. But the actor has to have the facility to just hairpin and do all of them at once. So we talked a lot about that.
I think you were, I mean, I sort of occasionally just thought, wow, how is she doing all that? I mean, in front of an audience. It was just incredible how you just looked like this is what you do every day, all day. It's so natural. And it was no, bumbling or stumbling, or it was just an amazing piece of acting, I think. And so often, I mean, I counted at least 7 changes on stage, and then a couple off stage. I'm sure there were more, but I, then you started doing half changes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, actors are so brave, and I think Annie was just really game from the beginning, wouldn't you say, Zach?
Oh yeah, definitely. And she was so, like, even up to the last week of the run, like, she was telling me about moments she would find where she would punctuate the language with the movement of whatever activity she was doing. And that started at the beginning, and it kept developing like all the way through the run of the show.
Mhm.
Yeah, she's a really smart actor. She was constantly working that thing, and it was growing throughout the course. We had to we did the video performance when we did, but by the end it was, she was just sailing through things, and it's sort of glorious to watch an actor who does that, who's got the skill and the technique, and keeps just at it. That's the special thing about what we do.
And she listened to the audience. Those were the texts I got. It was kind of how the audience was.
Oh yeah.
Yes, in a lot of ways, it wasn't a solo show. It was a show with the audience in the house, and hopefully virtually with the audience. This new virtual, this is all new, but to me, but as a play, it definitely works with the people you're talking to. So yeah.
So I think that's a lovely note for us to end on, unless there's anything else pressing from anyone else. No, cool, lovely. This is going to be online for a little bit for anybody who didn't get to join us today. So I'd also like to say you can catch the show digitally until the 16th. So you can see Annie Hank and all of her wonderful, wonderful acting up until the 16th next Sunday. And then we're also in rehearsals for Where We Stand by Danetta Lavinia Grays, directed by Kevin R. Free and starring Tracy Conyer-Lee. And we'll have our first in-person performance of that on the 21st of May. So just a couple weeks from now. It's very exciting. And that'll be our last show for the season. So we hope to see you there. We'll also have that digitally, but I don't know the dates for that right now in my brain. But it'll be late May, early June, somewhere in there. So you can join us for one more show. Thank you so much, Pam, Janice, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's actually, I've got to say, Janice, it is so wonderful to be able to put a face to a person that I've heard a lot about from Jade, all wonderful things, but it's just great.
Thank you. And for me as well. It's great. Can I say something as a virtual audience?
Absolutely.
I've watched a lot of theater through the pandemic. And readings, poetry readings and things. And it's been really interesting for me. I have missed, of course, that kinetic chemistry that happens, but I have kind of a quirky sense of humor, and it's not unlike me to, have a little gale of laughter that's out of sync with everyone else. And as an audience member, it's given me this freedom to just not even wonder what the other audience people are thinking, which is interesting. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I agree. There are pluses and there are minuses to all of that.
I miss it, but that's different. Thank you.
Thanks so much, y'all. And have a lovely Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.